All right, Prize Fighters, we're back with another installment of the Prize Fight Podcast. We're your hosts as usual. We're here talking about the big F. Failure.
Hello!
Failure. Just kidding. We're talking about failure today. I know. It's gonna be a good one now. We're
The
off the
F
race
word.
now. Yeah. The gruesome F word, failure. The last podcast we were talking about just being passionate and stuff, and leadership and all those good things. But I think one of the minor parts that we talked about on the last show was that in order to be a really good leader is that you try out a lot of different things. But unfortunately, some of those things you have to fail at in order to be, to me, a good leader, or not only that, but just to figure out life in general. And so, you know, kind of the premise of what I wanted to talk about today was basically, how as someone that fails, or when we go through failure like that, you know, how does that become positive? I think a lot of times we fear failure because we think it's the greatest enemy of getting ahead. But I think that we have to have failure in order to get ahead. And
I
so
agree.
I don't know what you want to speak into that, but I'll let you take and think. Off air, he said that he has the greatest scoreboard alive of failure, but I think
Yeah.
we all have pretty good scoreboards at that. But
I think if you Google failure,
oh, I
there's
don't know about that.
might see my
If you
most
listen to our last
satisfying.
podcast, if you no, I think if you Google failures, the Cowboys, right? Yeah, we've
Right,
we've turned
right.
this podcast into a bash the Dallas Cowboys apparently. So, but anyway,
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
Go ahead.
Um, I feel like and there's some um athletes who has a quote about failure, right? He's successful because he has failed, and
Yeah.
I agree. I have failed a lot in a lot of different areas in my life, and I feel like those taking those L's and those losses and learning from them, right,
Yeah.
has shaped me into somebody that has become more successful in different capacities, and so I feel like failure is almost a good thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I think failure is a good thing. I feel like if we try something out and we fail at it, and if you take that as that moment um, as a learning tool, as a moment that we can learn at, then I feel like maybe you really haven't failed. You've just learned, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think failure is a must, and I think failure is what shapes us. I think failure is what puts some calluses on our hands, and shapes us and or sets us up to become successful in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that culturally right now we're living in a time where unfortunately failing has made more people a victim
Hmm.
than really like what you're saying, taking on the ownership of the failure itself and learning
Yeah.
something from it in order to succeed later on. I think a lot
Hmm.
of people have failed and now they blame the process as to why they're not successful. Because all of failure is a process of elimination of the things that are really ultimately hindering you from success. So there's this process that we're all going to go through, and like you said, there's going to be wins and losses. But are you allowing the losses to uh, give you wisdom in order that you can propel yourself into the different stratosphere in hopes that it will continue to make you grow, develop, make you into more of what you had hoped it would be. But unfortunately, I think we're just living in a time where we just we live as if the world is out to get us instead of growing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can, what's the quote we learned? The moment can define you, or you can define the
Yeah,
moment, right? So I feel like I feel like the faster that we all realize that failure is okay, and the faster that we all realize that failure is a positive, then I feel like that we can take that and pivot, take that moment and pivot, and use that as our advantage uh, to keep pushing forward and to keep trying again.
Yeah.
Back in the day when I tried out sales for like this long.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe a couple months, and I learned really quick that I don't know. To me, I learned it took about 3 to 4 no's before I got my yes.
Yeah.
And so early on, not only did that failure humble me, um, and kind of it kind of got me down in the beginning, right? Which is okay. Before I learned, like, hey, if I get 2 more no's, that means the next, I'm going to get a yes,
Yeah.
coming up. And so I loved it. Which
Yeah.
sounds really weird. I loved, and one, people are just hilarious. And
Well, you
that's
just saw it was gonna almost like a competition against yourself.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
And
as long as
so
I
I
do
was
this.
cool with it.
Yeah.
I was excited. I'm getting excited talking about it right now.
Yeah.
To where people tell me, I'm like, sweet, well, see you later. Because I knew the faster I got my nose out of the way, then that yes was coming. And it literally worked like that.
Yeah.
God had some grace on me, and it literally worked like that. It was the craziest time of my life to where I was excited about hearing the word no.
Yeah.
It was really neat. And I feel like those failures, so to speak, those no's, in that moment, um, I learned really quick to be okay with failure because I
Yeah.
knew success was about to come,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, and I've just, that was cool to me, to where failure's all right as long as you learn from it. Okay, what did I do wrong in that situation to why they said no?
Yeah.
Right? Is it me? Is it the product? Is it money? Right? It's um and that was in that capacity of sales.
Yeah.
And so I knew, well, if it wasn't me and if it wasn't the product, well, then it must be the money. Okay, well, then how do I present that to the next person
Yeah.
more clearly, more efficiently, more professionally in order for them to say yes or no? And if they
Yeah.
told me no, I wouldn't get down in the dumps and go just quit or
Yeah.
play the victim,
Yeah.
right? Which is really easy to do in sales,
Oh yeah.
because you get in your head a lot.
Oh
You
yeah.
really do, because it's kind of like golf. Like, it's just you,
Yeah.
and it's just you. There's no way around it. There's no sugarcoating.
Yeah.
If you don't succeed, then it's on you. But I feel like I became okay with the no's.
Yeah.
And then to flip it back to failure, I guess as a bigger picture, we're now old enough to realize that it's okay to fail at some things,
Yeah.
because we can utilize that information and that loss to keep going, and we now know not what to do in order to become better in the future.
So that's interesting. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if you're like I don't think I was ever taught that young, like that this is part of life and it can grow you or stunt you. And it's just funny that as you get older, and like for me personally, having kids, it's like I want to teach them that, and it's hard. I mean, at that age, it's really hard to teach that,
Mhm.
but I feel like that's something that was just lost. Like I don't remember like your parents and your dad. Oh, by the way, like you're not gonna be good at a lot of things. Like I mean,
Yeah,
and I really think even today, like I see, like I've even talked to my wife that like our son when he was young, we would tell him like that was so good, that was so good, every little thing. I mean, he could, I don't know, he could finger paint a circle that's brown because he used all the colors and messed them up, and we
and we're all like,
and we tell him how great it is,
Mhm.
and I've noticed like at this age, I mean he's only 7, that I feel like that messes with him now because he does think I'm supposed to be great at things. So how do I handle when I'm not? And like I
Yeah,
have to talk to him through that. It's like you're not going to be, and that's okay. Like we're gonna
yeah,
work this. We're gonna be better at this. But even us, like I think there is generation that doesn't understand what failure is supposed to do, and that it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's going to happen to everybody multiple times. But it's almost like, how dare it happen to me? How dare I fail at anything? And then not knowing how to handle that when it wasn't just gifted to you because you're you. You
Yeah, I
think,
think there's a lot in that. I
yeah,
think there's a generation now they're entitled,
oh yeah,
right? Which I think's hilarious, especially when I interview them. I'm like, oh, good God, this is our future.
yeah,
Like, not pointing fingers at parents or anything, but we missed the boat on some of these kids in that
yeah.
interview.
But do you
They're just
think
so entitled.
we had this conversation? Maybe we did. I don't know. But do we can go on and on this podcast about young ignorance and our young ignorance. But that's my thing. I always think about when I look at someone younger, especially like maybe young 20s, and go, was I that 20 years ago? And and yeah, I think we did have this conversation because I was like, I think we were that,
Possibly, yeah.
but we're in our 40s and we're like, how did we get to a place where we think that we weren't entitled or we didn't deserve this or we and
Yeah.
so like I'm sure we had that, and maybe it's just we have perspective now because 20 years down the road we've gone through it all, or yeah, I say all, no, we've gone through a lot to understand that, where
40 years. Yeah, 40 years worth.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so like that's my thing, is it just like I've missed the perspective that I was once that same person that was naive to think that the world didn't revolve around me,
Yeah.
or is it truly, like one of the things I feel like we did have parents that taught us that hard work was valuable, where I don't think that that's something that is taught as much now. I see all these kids who don't know how to do anything and they expect their parents to step in and do it all. And it's like, no, that's not how this works.
Yeah.
So again, there's a failure there that they don't know how to contend with because no one's ever told them, you're, first of all, you don't know how to do it. Second, it's gonna take a couple of times until you get it.
Yeah. I remember, I think I learned at a young age, and I tell this story still to, uh, I feel like I told it maybe last month. Maybe I said it on a podcast.
Yeah.
But when it comes to failing and trying my best and doing my best and working hard, it was when I was really young. I was crying because we lost in a tournament. We didn't get the big trophy, right?
Yeah.
Because back then, I don't I don't know the whole trophy situation
Yeah.
now, but back then only first, second, and third got trophies.
Yeah.
That's it. And first was tall, second was shorter, and third you didn't even want, right?
You got a little
And
medal.
it was
A little
horrible.
bit.
Yeah. And you don't and at that young age, and I've always been competitive, at that young age I was crying because we didn't win in first place to get the big tall trophy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I was crying, and my mom was being truthful with me, and I was like, but I did my best.
Yeah.
And my mom, shout out to Mimi,
Yeah.
she was like, sometimes your best is not good enough.
Yeah.
Right. And I have taken that from my mom, and I was little out there
Yeah.
at Burl Huffman Complex in Lubbock, right? Little, crying over not winning it at all, and have applied that to where sometimes your best is just not good enough.
Yeah.
And I take that when I do fail or when I don't perform as well as I'd like to, or um, when I fall short and I feel like I did work hard and I did study and I did do blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
But sometimes your best is just not good enough.
So, like, this is flipping the script on it, as I tend to do. So, like, let's just take your perspective of the soccer analogy.
Okay.
So, you tell your mom, I did my very best. You didn't win. She says, sometimes your best's not good enough. So, where's the fine line to teach yourself that sometimes this is as good as it gets and you learn contentment from it? Or two, you learn how to be better at it. Or three, knowing that you did your best and there's a bunch of other circumstances that delayed the success. that in that you could use all three. One, you just flat out weren't the best team. You did your best, but they weren't. The other team was better. Second, you could have had other players on your team that didn't do their part, therefore you lost. Or
Mm-hmm.
the next 5 years, and if you play on the, like you were saying, like the same, if you were on the same club for 5 years, got second every year, like, and you like this is our team. Well, this is the best that we're gonna.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's so to be. So like, there's there's three roads I think that we need to navigate as we fail. Because I think they're all vital. I think they're all important. Because the thing that I personally I struggle with, and that I have had to work so hard, and we've talked about this off camera a lot, is that we're people that are driven so much that we don't ever think it's good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had to go, is there going to be things that happen that is as good as it's going to get, and can I learn full contentment with it being that good, just that good? Now, there's other ways I can be better at other things and stuff, but this one thing, this is as good as it's going to get. Be content with that. And so, like that personally, that's a struggle for me. But also going like I don't have to consider myself a complete failure.
Right.
That's as good as it I know it will be.
Right. I feel like that. I feel that too. I think that's the hard part is we're doing our best, we're trying our best, but yet we haven't made it to that next level to where we're shooting for. And I feel like that fine line is being content where we are and understanding that's where God wants us at the moment,
Yeah.
but not turning the gas off yet, not hitting the brakes, not shutting the engines down, but being content where we are,
Yeah.
knowing and having enough faith that we will get to that next level. I feel like that's the way. I think that's the way I'm going to answer that.
Yeah.
Um, so although right now at this moment my best is not good enough,
Yeah.
and it might not be good enough for a week, a month, a year, or 7 years.
Yeah.
But I'm not just going to post up and play video games because I'm
Oh yeah.
because I did my best and that's it. I think that again, I think we said that
Yeah.
before. That's kind of the easy way out, right?
I guess my
Um,
question is like you're bringing excellence every day. Like I think that we talked about this in in a couple of shows before, is that uh you can always grow in everything. And
mhm.
so like we understand that, and I don't think there's any doubt that you can continue to grow, but what I'm saying is I think that you can develop so many things, but learning how to be content. So like for instance, for you, like I don't know, like your what does your next 10 years look like? I'm not going to ask that question, but say the next 10, 20, 30 years is you are at your position at your job. Can you be content with that, or are you always going to be fighting the thought, oh my gosh, there's always something more, like instead of continuing excellence in that spot? Because to me, like that's the question I have to ask myself, is that if I never left anything other, if everything stayed the same today, am I content with those things? And sometimes yes, like I can get to that place, and sometimes I have to fight it because it may not be, and I have to be okay with that.
Mhm.
I think that's, I mean, I don't know. Again, I think you're looking, when I talk to you, it's always from a business perspective, as far as this is not going to be my landing space. I've got more, and I think we need to aspire for those things. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like if you're in your position for the next 20 years, can you find content in that, even though you are still working and growing and being driven? That I mean, that's the question I have to ask myself.
No.
Okay, okay, but why? I mean, that's the question. Why though? Why?
um, let me be two faced. The answer, me to you, everybody listening, all four of us, no. Okay, no. However,
Yeah,
I can be, and I will be, and I would be, because even though Spencer is in the same chair for the next 10, 15 years, whatever it may be,
yeah,
right? We can just throw a number out there. I would be aware and smart enough to know to where, although my chair is not changing,
yeah,
I can help others grow.
yeah,
And if I am doing that, then I feel like that is making me a better person
Yeah.
and really taking me to the next level, right? So just because, whatever the corporation we work at, and hey man, you've done it all. Here's your chair. Like this is it. This is your chair in Texas. This is your chair. I can be like, okay, well, I'm done. I'll just show up 8 to 5, and that's good. No, obviously, because my drive's not going to allow that. But I feel like if my chair's not going to change,
Yeah.
I'll be content with that. But I will become better and stronger.
Yeah.
By pulling other people up and helping other people.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm saying. I think
that's both sides.
Because I think, like, when we fail at something, we're always looking at, well, I mean, and we've been talking about it, is we're looking at it from a perspective of, okay, I really ultimately want to get to this one thing. I have this one thing in mind. And so everything that I'm doing as I'm failing upward, so to speak, as I'm growing in wisdom, trying to get.
Yep.
But as you said, what's that one thing that once you finally get there, you failed enough, have enough wisdom, you get there that you're content with, okay, this was it. And not to say, like you said, you can do other things within that thing to get stronger, to be wiser, to adapt and like you said, build people up or whatever it may be. But in the place, in the space that you are, that I think that's the question as far as failing, because sometimes it's not failing. It is, this was the call that you were called to, and you can continue to help others and all those things, but also, like, I want you to be content in this space, whatever that may look like. And I don't think it's always like from a business. I think from a relational standpoint, like, I mean, I don't think that you're just stuck with your spouse the rest of your life. I think it is, hey, I want you to be content in this. You can grow and develop the relationship. You can do things to make it better. However, this is your spouse. Like, that's not changing. You know what I mean? I mean, it could change if you. I'm just saying, but I'm saying by the design of what God intended marriage is that, to me,
right.
You found
right.
a helpmate that you need to be content with the rest of your life. If you choose them, that's what the call is. And so I think, as far as failing is concerned, sometimes it's not failing as it is, I've got to get to a place of accepting that this is what it is, and be good with it.
Yeah, I think that's tough because I feel like if I feel like that I want to start a small business or start a coffee shop and call it He Brews.
Yeah.
But yet that's really not what God has called me to do. I guess it might look like failure, but it's just not, just because it's what Spencer thinks.
Yeah.
Or plans. And if it doesn't come through, well, then Spencer looks at Spencer as he failed.
Yeah.
Then I think we have to look at the bigger picture, because the quote is, man plans and God laughs, right?
Yeah.
And I just feel like if I feel like I was really born to do a coffee shop and it fails, well, then, I'm a failure. But it's like, no, really. And I think you and I are old enough and aware enough to understand that God has something different for us.
Yeah.
And so I'll be content with that failing because I have enough faith that I know my win's coming.
Yeah.
Right. And so I feel like, kind of going back to the.
So, like, I was going to say, so, like, just using that as, I would hope at this point in our lives, we know what has, through failure and all those things and the circumstances we've been through, we understand, especially when something is ordained by God and what is not. And so, like, even at an older age, I'm not saying we don't make dumb decisions still. But
oh, yeah, I do all the time.
What I'm saying is, like, I think one of the biggest things that we should learn is pressing into a place of, like, if I have a thought of starting something or having this decision made. In fact, like right now, me and my wife, we're processing like other decisions, but like every
Mhm.
day, it's like we talk about it, but we're also like, hey, we're leaving in your hands. If this is not, you're going to shut the store pretty quick, or you're going to open it or whatever, and just be doing the life that we know what to do right now, and just waiting in that moment instead of rushing. Because I think that's what it is. A lot of times when it's our decision, we just want to rush into it because it's the
Yeah.
flavor of the week and getting going now. So
Yeah. I feel like I have failed, last year, last month, last week, years before. I feel like often we fail because um, I've always thought, and I believe in, if you don't, when you're in that failure, when you're in that season, you kind of look back and you're like, how did I get here? Or what decisions did I make to get here? Why was I so dumb to, and here I am and I failed, right? Whatever that may be. I believe in to where if you don't believe or if you don't listen to God in your conscience, then you're going to listen to God in the consequences.
yeah,
And I feel we're old enough to where if we don't, he puts it, if we have something that we're wanting or we're trying to get to or whatever, but yet you know, I'm not saying he speaks to us out loud, but
yeah,
down in here,
yeah,
we feel that.
yeah.
You do.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If you choose to ignore that, do I feel like you're going to fail? Yes.
Yeah,
And when you do fail, it's kind of like the Verizon commercial, old school Verizon commercial. God's going, can you hear me now? You know, can you hear me now? What about now? Can you hear me now? And so I feel like in some of my failures, I look back and I'm like, Dad, blame it.
yeah,
4 Sundays ago, I should have listened, or I knew I shouldn't have, whatever X,
yeah,
Y, Z.
yeah.
When it comes to those failures, God's a little ramble there. I don't know if I even.
No, I understand what you're saying. Like, I mean, no, no, I think I mean, that's vital. I think that it's important that we always can decipher as we get older what is setting us up for failure, and what are we waiting in so that it will be a success. Because again, like there's things that I wish, I think we could always say, we could always say this, is that I wish I would have known then what I know now.
Yeah,
So you
yeah,
learn, so you just learn as you go. But I think one of the biggest and greatest things that I've learned is just the wisdom of patience, just waiting, not rushing into it, and really like analyzing, because I can analyze something to death. Like I sit back and I go, okay, like in the long term, what does this look like? What are all the many little tiny aspects of the benefits, pros, cons, whatever, and I do that pretty much on everything. I mean, heck, if I go, like I'm probably the world's worst like window shopper, because I'm like, I'll go in every store, but I'll be like, it's a little too pricey. Oh, that's not quite the color. Oh, it's not. Like I'm just real, like I'm specific, and I know I'm gonna do my research before I go into whatever, and so that I'm just one of those people. But I think I've learned that. Like I've learned, hey, just take your time in this. This is not a desperation like Hail Mary thing. Like, and I think that's most things. Like you're learning along the way whether you make the decision or not in order to fail or not. Like you don't have to set yourself up for failure to learn.
So let me play devil's advocate
Okay.
with a little
Yeah.
bit of what
Yeah.
what, what you just said. Do you feel like you might have left something on the table? Do you feel like you might have missed out on a on a calling, on a success, on a win because you were window shopping, or let me turn it a little bit more, or do you feel like you might have missed out on a win or something that God wanted to give you
Yeah.
because you were comfortable
Yeah.
window shopping?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring that up, and we can talk. I can't
That's a
talk.
little devil's
I
advocate there.
cannot
Play on
talk
words
about it.
for you.
I can't talk about it on camera, but it's kind of something we're going through right now. And the question that we're asking is, are you are you too are you getting too comfortable? What I was trying to say to my spouse is I don't want to get too comfortable in uh, what's easy and what is good because you know I think that we can get to that place. I think that we can get so wrapped up in it being so comfortable and easy that sometimes you do miss things, you miss opportunities, and
Or it causes us to fail.
so I'll use this as an example. When I this was the summer before I met my spouse. I This was May before we met in August. So I had been in a relationship for 7, 8 months, and it wasn't healthy. There was nothing good about it, but for the sake of the relationship, just pretty much staying in it. When everybody else around was like, "This is not," wouldn't listen to anybody. Um, and I was reading a book, and basically in the book it said that in, as you read the story of the Bible, there are many times where God gives people multiple chances for whatever it may be, ABC. He goes, but however, there's even more instances where God gave that person that one chance to do it, and they didn't do it. Instead,
Mhm.
as I read that, I was like, how much have I missed out because I was in the relationship? How much did I miss out because all I was focused on was making this thing work, which was not healthy at all, in order to work instead of maybe getting out of it or whatever and doing all these things that would bring more happiness, would bring more fulfillment, would give me more wisdom, would all of these things. And I very, very shortly after that, I ended it. I ended the relationship. And like right after that, I got like some opportunity to go do something. Then and then that summer I was 29. I was 29 at the time. That summer, I said, God, I said I am more content with the life you've given me, and if I desire to be married, but like by the time I turned 30, which would have been that December, I said, if I've not met the person, I am glad to be single. To
Yeah.
August. So, um, to answer your question, I think that it's easy to get to that place. I think it's easy to get comfortable for the sake of being comfortable.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
uh, I think in life, I just believe this with all my heart. I don't think any one person lives for fun. And what I mean by that is, I think everyone is going to go through the hills and valleys of life. And so, like, if you are that one person, you need to let me know because I want to know how you made your life so sparkly and clean. What I'm saying is, I think every single person has to go through valleys, and they get up on the hill for a while. Then here comes another valley, and I think that's just it's not. I don't think God's like, well, let me test you and see. I think it's more of the out again, like we talked about the team. It wasn't your choice to be second place.
Mm-mm.
I think there's a bunch of outward circumstances that leads our lives to go to the valley, but it's through failure that we've learned how to get back up the hill. And so, like I can tell you, I had to do a lot of like come before I got to this point right now. I had to go through a major valley, and what I thought that valley was going to be the biggest hill ever. I thought the position that I got in that valley was the best position that I never wanted to leave. That I was going to be loyal to. This was the best thing that happened, and it ended up being one of the most hurtful things. And
Mhm.
7 years coming, what other people thought was the valley ended up being our hill.
Mhm. Mhm.
Healing, successful, gratifying that we could have ever asked for. So, like, that's the other thing. Is our view skewed? What we think is supposed to be the hill, is it really the valley?
or vice versa.
Vice versa. Yeah.
Most definitely.
So, I mean,
Most
I
definitely.
know I'm like questioning you with another question, but I think that that's the thing. I think God has to raise our vision and make us aware of what's what. Because in my eyes, I could see that this is the most successful thing that I want, but at what cost and what kind of sacrifice and what kind of pain and hurt for me that could ultimately lead. I mean, I've shared it on here. That valley before we got to this place led me to have to go to multiple years, which I'm grateful for, multiple years of counseling,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which I am over it now. But what I'm saying is, like, if I would have already known that that was going to be a valley, did I have to go? I think I probably would have still. But what I'm saying is, if I had a better view of what that really truly was supposed to be, would I be able to bypass that, knowing that hey, that was really more of a landmine than it was a permanent stop. So I don't know. I mean, that's the question. I don't know.
I
Question.
think sometimes it. I think sometimes our failures or certain seasons feel like this is the most. This is the worst thing that could ever happen, and my life is over, and
Yeah.
I'm never going to recover after this. But yet, once you walk through the valley,
Yeah.
you don't even have to get the hill yet. You can just walk through it.
Yeah.
But once you walk through the valley, you look back and you're like, well, it wasn't as bad, and the sky wasn't falling as though I thought it was.
Yeah.
And so we can take that perspective and that lesson learned.
It's because we're nearsighted. We're nearsighted in our vision. We only project
Yeah.
the now. We don't look at the long term effects. Whatever. That I mean,
Yeah.
that's even with our failure. That's like I'm making a dumb decision right now. Well, it's just going to affect me right now. Like if you, well, I'm just saying, like when MySpace came out and you put the stupidest thing on the planet on there, you're like, oh, that won't affect me. Well, now you're trying to get a job in your 40s, and they pull up something from MySpace, and they'll be like, "Do you know what you said in 2001? You know, when you were like keg standing, and you know what? You know, I mean, like, it's crazy that something that we thought in that moment was insignificant, they're using that now to and again, that's
Judge,
what.
judge.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
using it to judge it.
Judge what you've done, but again, like that is our perspective. A lot of times, it's so nearsighted as to go even in the most pain, in the biggest of failures. You think one, this is the hardest thing that I'm ever gonna have to go through, and two, I am the only one that has gone through this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You think that?
Yeah,
Yeah, like I'm so embarrassed. I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed of. I have failed yet again. I'm the only one who. No, you have no idea how I feel. Um, to kind of speak to that, when you said we think we're the only ones going
yeah,
through it, back in 12, 13 years ago, I had to attend a class, and I was embarrassed, because I thought I was good. Everybody was going to be judging me for my failure,
yeah,
and I was so embarrassed and so ashamed. But then I was like, after it was all said and done, and I had a few years behind me in my sobriety, I was like, wait a minute, we were all there because we all failed and we all did the same thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And so that class was part of us, was part of our recovery and part of us becoming more educated and becoming sober. And so everybody in that room had been arrested just like I had, and
yeah.
had failed at um, whatever XYZ. And that's the funny thing about it is I walking into that class that night, I thought I was gonna, like, everybody was gonna be looking at me like I was the only one, but that was my mindset. I'm the only one
Well,
that has ever done this, and it's
yeah,
not.
well, that's the same perspective as church. Like it's like everybody's coming into the building as a bunker. Like you got people that think, oh, I'm the worst person in the world that has done these awful things, and then you have these other people that think they do. They're like, well, they did some, and it's like we're all in the same boat. We've all done stupid, immature, like horrible things. Some
Yeah.
got caught, some didn't, or whatever. But it's like we're all in the same boat. Like it's not like you're special. Like you've never sinned before. Because
Mhm.
trust me, I mean that's why we're there. I mean, that's why we should be there. That's why you know we need the grace of a good God to deem us redeemable. I mean, that's why we're there. It's not because you're so high and mighty. I mean, that's not why you're there. Or if you feel like you're the lowest of the low, that's not. We're supposed to be coming together in a community to go, hey, we all got our hangups, but one thing's for sure, we've got a God that can transform it and redeem it. So, but a lot of people don't live that way. So,
He who is perfect, throw the first
yeah,
stone.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, like, as far as I mean, you could probably write a book. I know we've already talked about this, but if you could pick, let's say, two things that you've really learned from failing, I know, and again, there's probably a lot, but two big things that you've learned from failing, like what do you think are the two biggest things now, like living today, that you feel like you've learned from failing?
Listen to God in your conscience.
Yeah,
Um, and that's number one. Number two would be it's okay to fail.
yeah,
It's okay. Um, those are probably to me the biggest one is what's going to drive everything. It's
yeah,
what drives us daily, I think. Because again, if you don't listen to him then, you're going to listen to him later
yeah,
at a higher cost.
yeah,
Um, and sometimes it can be at a real high cost.
yeah,
Um, and then two, when it comes to failing, on a more what I feel like is a more positive side, the faster that the faster that we learn it's okay to fail and to take those as a learning moment, um, the faster we can get on and become better.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that you can't use the excuse as to which you can just continually fail. But I think that once you learn that it's okay, there's more pressure off of you to live a life that you think that you have to be perfect every time out the gate.
Yeah, I think you and I learned. I'm sure you and I got yelled at on the football field together. I
Oh yeah,
mean, you can hear old Dindy say, if you're going to mess up going 5,000 miles an
yeah,
hour,
yeah. That's right.
right? Like let's get it out of the way.
Yeah,
Like mess up, let's learn. Okay, good. You did that. Now you know not now. Now let's run it again.
yeah,
And so I feel like if we're going to do it, let's go ahead and get it out of the way so we
yeah,
can run the way it's supposed to be ran and be successful that way. I feel like sometimes failure, going back to your window shopping in business, I would call that paralysis by analysis.
yeah, yeah.
Nothing happens.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Happens, right? If I took you in and applied it, and
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
um, I, I don't. Nothing gets done if we're scared of failing or if we're overthinking
yeah,
something, over analyzing something, then we're paralyzed,
yeah,
and you don't win that way either. I think that's a form of failure.
yeah, yeah,
Like no movement is failing,
yeah,
and so I feel like um, again, the faster that we realize or teach others that it's okay to fail, it's okay to try something different. That's a different way of saying it. It's okay to try something different. It's okay to step out of your comfort zone.
yeah,
Um, Knowing that we might fail, it's way better than just sitting in the same place that you were last year.
yeah,
And I feel like nobody wins that way. You haven't bettered yourself, so that's a loss. You haven't helped better others, so that's another loss because you might be sitting on something and overthinking something that God has put
yeah,
on your heart, and it's not being shared with the world or being shared with your loved one or being shared with your family or your team members, and that's a loss.
Yeah.
That's a loss.
Yeah.
So you might as well get out there and try. I don't think I'll be in healthcare for the rest of my life. I have some things on my heart that I know I want to do. Besides that, am I scared to fail? No.
Yeah.
Is there risk? Yes. But
But
I'd almost,
you're calculating risk.
mm-hmm.
You're
Yeah,
not you're not going, "Hey, I got this on my heart and guess what I'm doing tomorrow? I'm quitting." Because I
exactly.
but that's
Right.
what, and I guess that's what maybe I misspoke as far as window shopping. I think it's more I think you're right. I think there's been times where I've been like, "Okay, just instead of moving forward, I'm going to stand here." But I think as I get older, it's more calculating risks because
Yeah.
again, I'm not responsible just for myself.
Right.
That
And I
I mean,
feel
that's the thing.
in business, we're taught you mitigate risk.
Yeah.
That's what you do. You mitigate risk. That's what we're taught,
Yeah.
and that is true, right? You don't that's true.
Yeah.
And so we are now becoming more calculated
Yeah.
in our decisions. The older we become, and that's okay as long as it doesn't paralyze you,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
You know,
For
I mean, the best description that I can think of is just recently when Jesus asked the disciples to drop everything and go. He didn't say drop everything and just stay. I mean, the call was go. And
Mhm.
so you're not supposed to stay there. You're supposed to go. Like and along the way there I mean, obviously if you read, like there are failures among that. There's things that happen. There's circumstances beyond their control. There's all these things, but you're supposed to go nonetheless. And I
Yeah,
think that's the hardest thing is, you know, and sometimes you can calculate the risk all you want to and it's still not going to make a difference.
Mm-mm.
Walk into it and failure in it. So,
Failure's tough. It's in some ways failure's fun. In some way, it feels good, and it can be used in a positive way. But then sometimes failure's tough, and it's tough on the ego.
yeah.
And if you let that ego dictate things and control things, then it can be really hard on you to move forward and to try again.
Yeah.
But through my failure, to kind of add to that, man, I've had to have death to ego a long time ago.
Yeah.
Am I confident in what I do and in the capacity and in my lane right now? Yes, I am.
Yeah.
Yes, I have. I am every day. I'm confident, and that might come off as ego,
Yeah.
but I learned a long time ago in leadership you have to have death to ego, and you will be humbled,
Yeah.
and you will be humbled in front of others,
Yeah.
right? And I feel like in order to lead everybody in a more positive way, it's you have to have death to ego real quick.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, or you will fail.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the quickest way. That's the quickest
Yeah,
way
it
to go.
is.
Because
Yeah,
what you're doing, I think not only that you're failing, but what you're doing is you're driving separation between you and people that eventually can understand failure too. Like what I mean by that is they can understand your failure.
hmm
Like
yeah,
you have an ego about it, all it does is separate people to go, well, I can't handle this person, and I walk away instead of people that understand. Hey, you know, like yeah, he was not arrogant, but he was very bold in what he did, and he made a mistake. And because I know he's so driven, yeah, I can understand him, his personality, and all that thing. I think when ego's involved, it just drives people away, and therefore there's no one left there to walk with you through failure. And
yeah.
that's another
It,
important aspect of it. You have to have people around you to help you walk through that, so that you can come out the other side healthy. And
yeah, and it's all how it all depends upon how you react to failure, right? That's another layer of it. Is you can either take it as a loss and you're a victim now, or you can respond to it and pivot and use it as a positive and just keep going. Mm.
Yeah. We could probably go another hour on this, but we'll kind of wrap it up. it's such, it's such a well, it's just such a big
I
topic.
don't feel like I talked much on that one. I don't. I
Oh
think
yeah.
that's.
I mean, I think it's good. I think again, and we might have to come back around to it at some point, but because I think there's so much you can say about it.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of meat to that aspect of life that it's so important to accept it, but also navigate it properly so that it's a benefit to life instead of taking so much away from it. Because again, we've said it. I think it's taken a lot of life from a lot of people because not only have they not grown from failure, but now they're so fearful of it that, like you said, they just kind of stand still. Like they're not
Yeah.
going to move, they're not going to do anything,
Yeah.
so they're just stuck. And so I think it's important for both aspects that hey, it's inevitable that it's going to happen, but also hey, don't let it affect you in a way that you just stand still. You need to keep going.
Yeah. Don't miss this moment because you're looking back at a past failure. Like, don't miss this moment.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not 99.9% of your failures is not the end of the world.
Nope.
And there might be something a bigger failure, like that might not even be the biggest one to come. You never know. You just don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, on a positive note, just be prepared for bigger failures. So anyway,
Yeah.
we'll wrap this one up. I hope that this helps anyone listening. I think that it's so important to understand that it's okay to be in that place. It's okay to have hangups and situations that you might be on the losing end of it, but it's not. It's not over. It's not. We're sitting here living and breathing in our 40s after a lot of mess ups and mistakes and failures. So that's not encouragement. You know, hopefully you can continue to go. So we'll wrap this one up. Again, thank you guys for turning on the show. We appreciate it as always. You can watch on YouTube, all the platforms, audio platforms. Check in. We're trying to do one every week, so check in every week with us as we hopefully will bring some small nugget of some kind of wisdom. Hopefully we're helping.
Or entertainment.
Or yeah, if you just need a good laugh, or if you don't
Yeah.
like, as you've noticed the last two, if you don't like the Cowboys, join in and we'll catch you guys next time on the next show. Catch you later.